And it is 2 o'clock. Cary Harrison with you. This is a special edition of Go Harrison. Coming up, Shailene Woodley. You know her from the wonderful Divergent and Insurgent series. Yes, she is feeling the burn. So is Josh Fox. You know him, of course, Oscar-nominated 2010 documentary Gasland. He is also feeling the burn. And Bruce Carter, Black Men for Bernie, restoring families across America. He's touring the U.S., raising awareness for Bernie Sanders, targeting families. Plus, of course, Greg Palast, BBC reporter brought in by the Rolling Stone, here to investigate election fraud. We're going to give you the top secret tips of how you can successfully vote tomorrow. Here and only here on KPFK.
What's new about Tiger Woods?
Michael Jackson.
Elvis
Presley.
O.J. Simpson. Abandoned baby.
Go Harrison. Talk show. Random, political, outrageous, philosophical, analytical, passionate, into sunsets, roadkill cooking tips, open-minded, swordsman, bent, resolute, investigative, companion, fearless, piercing the cloud of mainstream entertainment. Live from Hollywood, Go Harrison.
And it is 1 minute past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. We are going to do a special 1 hour today, an all-star loaded cast. Some of the greatest thinkers, some of the greatest activists from anywhere in the world coming in to tell it like it is. Now understand, when people are celebrities, when people are investigative journalists like the great Greg Palast, whose voice you're going to hear in just a moment, who have been in exile. Why? Because when you put a little pressure against the owners, sometimes they become disrelished, and you end up being, sent overseas where you get to do the good work. And we find out what's going on Capitol Hill by going to London, then only to come back to the U.S. Then we have Shailene Woodley. Now, we've all seen the Divergent series. We've seen Insurgent. We understand what it's like in this draconian, Huxleyan, Orwellian future, what it looks like when things go wrong. And that's why these movies are doing what the news won't do here in the U.S. They play it all the way out to the end game. And when actors actually spend years shooting these things and learning how to tell these stories, they become real experts, much as if you had read Orwell's 1984 a dozen times or Animal Farm 63.7 times as I did. It was the 0.7 times I had to finally put it down. You sort of get a sense of what this stuff really is going to look like and how it's going to unfold. And then you have people like Josh Fox. We all know him from Gasland, right? Gasland 1, Gasland 2. Now we have Gasland 3. Academy, Oscar-nominated, a huge documentary. He has become the go-to ubiquitous anti-fracking fracker, right? This guy knows how to defrack what is fracked up here in the U.S. So he's going to be coming on and telling you how he connects and reaches so many. Again, this is the key thing. How do you and I connect with 327 million other Americans? Well, you're going to find out how. Plus, how your vote is truly going to count tomorrow. Did I mention Bruce Carter? I believe I did earlier. Bruce Carter, and there's a massive bus, by the way, outside our KPFK studios right now. This thing is so huge, you could put 48 different families in there, plus the entire contents of the largest Hilton. And this thing is massive. Black Men for Bernie is the bus. And what Bruce does is restores families across America, the awareness for Bernie Sanders all over the place. He's going to be our first guest here. And before we bring him on, I want to reintroduce you to a name that is so... Well, if it's not in your back pocket, written down on a piece of paper, where to go, who to talk to, and who has the secret keys to the automobile of insanity, it is Greg Palast. And Greg, as always, welcome to Go Harrison.
Glad to be with you, Cary. And today is a Save Your Vote emergency alert. Whoop, whoop. Because I've just gotten some really unpleasant news. Let's see if we can make a joke out of the collapse of our democracy. I got a notice from Santa Rosa, a legal affidavit that was signed in which someone says that the county officials are telling all the poll workers that if you go in to vote and you're what's called an NPP voter, that does not mean National Police Playback. It does mean no party preference. In other words, if you're a real independent voter, you have the right to vote in the Democratic presidential primary, but you must ask for a crossover ballot. Now, if you're in Santa Rosa or some other benighted counties in California, they are telling you that if you don't use the words, I want a Democratic Party crossover ballot, you get an NPP ballot, which has no presidential race on it. So you can't vote for Bernie, you can't vote for Hillary, you can't vote for nobody for president. And that is illegal, okay? That's just ugly vote suppression. Because a third of Americans, in fact, the NPP vote in California is as big as the Democratic Party vote. Oh, wow. Bernie is winning among NPP voters by the polls by 40 percentage points, whereas regular Democrats are going for Hillary by 30. So if they stop the NPP vote, they've taken this race from Sanders not by the vote, but by blocking the vote. And we have with us Bruce Carter of Black Men for Bernie, and I have a very quick question for you, Bruce.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We've heard these stories now, and I want you to fill it out, about suppression of the vote that would affect Bernie Sanders. Why is it that Bernie Sanders voters are being treated like they're black?
Well, the biggest thing is...
We should point out, by the way, that it is possible, and I can neither confirm nor deny, that Bruce Carter may or may not be black, too.
It's a possibility.
So you have a certain expertise.
That's a possibility.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that I've found is that based on what it appears that corporate America wants, the establishment wants, and they want it by any and all means possible. So whether it's cheating a Latino at this point, a black, or all of y'all the same. So if you're for Bernie Sanders, you're all like bad right now. So we feel like this bad behavior will happen more where people are more likely not to voice the opinion loud that night. And when I say that, there's a lot of new voters. That means you have young people that haven't voted before, and they're doing it because someone approached them. They love the fact that they can support Senator Sanders. That's probably the only reason they're voting. You have some black men who I've personally been in Watson, Compton, who were not going to vote, and after talking to them, they said, well, man, I'll go ahead and do it. But we need it to happen the right way. And it's those people that I'll say Governor Brown and his underlings know that, you know, if we can disrupt that vote, then we have a chance to really do what the mainstream media want to do, and that's pronounce former Secretary of State Clinton as the victor. And for those things, it is illegal. It's wrong. And I think that's what's fueling people to not want to support her, as I'm definitely a Bernie or bust guy.
I just want to ask one thing. At 4 p.m. today in Los Angeles, you're going to be down at City Hall holding a press conference because you don't like the way that voters, especially voters of color, are being treated right now. Could you explain what your issue is?
Our biggest issue is, as we've talked with poll workers, there's just not enough ballots. You just explained the importance of the NPP ballot. And when you look at the numbers...
Wait just one second. NPP means that you're no party preference, a real independent voter. That's millions of voters in California. You can vote in the Democratic primary, but you have to say the magic words. It's not Mother May I. It's not abracadabra. It's I want a crossover Democratic ballot.
I'm just going to jump in for a second so we can identify the voices. People jump in and out of cars, in and out of their buses, such as you, Bruce Carter. We are talking right now with Greg Palast, famous BBC reporter, also brought here personally by Rolling Stone magazine to do an explosive investigative report on how this election is so fraudulently being delivered, or should we say undelivered, to those who care. NPP, we've heard this term, no party preference, called independent, which I'm independent and Greg is independent. If you are mistakenly part of the American Independent Party, you are not independent. You are codependent with Lyndon LaRouche and the late George Wallace. So that's another problem altogether. But you must, and here's what Greg and what Bruce are telling you. If you are wanting to vote for a Democrat, for Bernie Sanders, you must physically, verbally stand in front of Mildred with the glasses at the end of her nose, sitting behind that little table, and say, I want a Democratic crossover ballot.
Yes.
I want that. And we are now hearing also that a lot of these people are being told not to give them out. Sorry, we don't have any. So you can demand that as you're right. Is that right?
Right, and do not. And Bruce can tell you this. Bruce is from Black Men for Bernie. And by the way, just so you know, I'm not for Bernie or Hillary or anyone.
Right.
I'm or for Ernie. I'm here
well,
because
you're for Ernie.
I'm a the Cookie Monster. But yes, my purpose is to make sure people are informed so they can vote. Okay, this is about not who you vote for, but that you can vote. People are being told if they're NPP, in some areas, we just got another affidavit coming in from a poll worker saying they were told once again to give out to the voter a provisional ballot. A provisional ballot, if you heard our last broadcast, is a placebo ballot, guys. It makes you feel like you voted, but you haven't voted. Have you run into problems like that, Bruce?
Well, I've seen and heard the problems across the country, New York probably being the most famous. But I spent some time at the election register office on Saturday and spoke with the head clerk. The biggest issue is this. You're now being forewarned that there are problems if you are anywhere tied with the state of California. So you have a chance to correct it before it becomes an issue. And that's what we want to know. Are you going to be very blatant and just not do anything? Or are you going to do everything you possibly can, like right now? So we know, because it has been told by the poll worker services, that they're having a problem with having enough staff. You know, they prepare for a big election, but people are canceling. They're not showing up. What are you going to do? And so we know that there are millions here that would love to go out and volunteer if they need that to make sure that it's fair. As you said, whether you want to vote for Senator Clinton, whether you want to vote for Bernie, I hope you vote for Bernie. But either way, you want everybody to leave there with the dignity of that their vote meant something tomorrow, not 28 days later when you count through the provisional ballots and you get tired and you may find out it doesn't matter because the race has been called.
Yes, also do understand, people, that if you take a provisional ballot, the chance of it actually being counted is really slim. So I really want to talk to these people who are NPP voters. You can vote in the Democratic Party primary, not the Republican, by the way, only Democratic primary, but you have to know the magic words. I want a crossover ballot, and no, I don't want a provisional ballot. I want a crossover Democratic Party ballot so you can vote. We're having a civil rights crisis in the state of California. I expect 500,000 voters. I want to repeat that. At least 500,000 voters are probably going to lose their votes because they don't know how to actually vote. And by the way, if you are an NPP voter that got a ballot in the mail, please, here's another thing you have to know. You have to physically bring in that ballot. You have to physically bring it in and exchange it for the crossover Democratic ballot.
And the correct word is surrender.
Surrender.
You have to say you want to surrender that ballot to get the appropriate ballot, so you don't get that provisional ballot. Now, something else I learned was before you take that provisional ballot.
And I'm just going to jump in and say, this is written down somewhere so we can give a website, I hope.
Correct.
So people can go and just print it out and take it with them.
Correct.
Good.
Where's that?
It's a government website, so I don't keep them in my brain, but I'll make sure we get it before I leave.
We will.
Right.
I promise you, before the end of the show. Let me just jump in for a second for people coming and going. Harrison with you. This is Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, also 99.5 in Ridgecrest and China Lake, also in Connecticut, believe it or not. Today we are on WPKN in Connecticut, KPFT in Houston, KNSJ in San Diego, KPFA up in San Francisco. So this is a statewide broadcast today because we're bringing you the important and immediate 411. When in doubt, vote it out. But we want to make sure you're able to actually exercise that. Greg Palast is here, BBC's Greg Palast. He's also known through Rolling Stone magazine. They actually physically brought him here to change how we understand the system is working and also give us, as comfortably as possible, Bruce Carter here with Black Men Matters, explain to us some of the tricks that are going on so that we can navigate the shoals when we encounter them. And this is something, Bruce, that you've seen over and over again.
Yes. The biggest thing is, the saddest thing, I guess, is that whether it's Santa Monica, Santa Barbara, L.A. County, is that we are not training people to be effective. We're training them for failure. That's the biggest issue. And to me, that's suppression. Because if you walk in and you want to get a product, they're going to lead you to the product and tell you how to get it. But tomorrow, people want to vote. So let's talk about what needs to happen when you get there. Number one, if you have a ballot that was mailed to you, they have not sent enough ballots to your prospective precinct because they're taking it saying you're going to mail it in. Well, there's a shortage of ballots there. But when you go there, take your ballot and use the word that I want to surrender and place my vote today. Here's why that's important. If you drop off your mail-in ballot, it will not be counted tomorrow as part of the voting number. That is important. You want to make sure that you're part of that TV number that they use to call races, even though officially a race cannot be certified for 28 days. So mail-in ballot people, please take your ballot and specifically ask for a surrender ballot.
One other question. If you're a first-time voter, do you have to bring an ID?
I have heard you do have to bring an ID.
In most counties, they're asking you to bring a photo ID. So look, guys, here's the deal. You got an NPP ballot. You walk in and say, I want to surrender this ballot. I want a crossover Democratic Party ballot. Here is my old ballot, and you have to bring the envelopes. Bring the envelopes. You got to bring in the envelopes. Are you guys taking this down?
Yeah, and the phones are blowing up. They're totally seriously.
There's no lines, right?
It's X'd out, as it were. That means we have 30 rollover lines that are now maxed.
Oh, wow.
Here's probably the easiest go-to way to understand it. Pretend you're going to Europe. Maybe you've never been. Pretend you're going to Canada now, Mexico. Bring your passport, bring your driver's license, bring every credit card you possess.
Birth certificate,
every form of ID, every piece of paper that's connected somehow inadvertently to voting, including the sample ballot they sent you a year ago. Bring it all in a massive suitcase, in a rollerboard, in a steamer trunk, and dump it on the desk if you have to, and cover your back and take pictures. Take pictures after you voted as well, in case there's a major lawsuit, right?
Yes, this is Greg Palast speaking. You know, writing for Rolling Stone. You may and by the way, you can get a weekly broadcast, the Election Crimes Bulletin at www.gregpalast.com. We are here with Bruce Carter of Black Men for Bernie. This is not about selling you Bernie or Ernie or anyone. It is about making sure you get to vote. Millions of people registered without a party preference. NPP in California, you have to, 1, walk in with your ID. 2, walk in with a mailed-in ballot if you received a ballot and with the envelopes that went with it. You have to say, I surrender this ballot to you. Can I surrender this to you? And I would like a crossover Democratic Party ballot. I'm not selling you on Dems. The Republicans do not allow you to take their ballots, okay? Get used to it. And and that's what you got to do, save yourself. We've had this. And anyway, I do know that Bruce has to get on his bus, the Black Men for Bernie bus. It's really quite spectacular out there, and because he's got to get all the way downtown for his 4 p.m. City Hall press conference. Join him there and get the word. And hopefully he's invited the governor. Let's see if he shows.
Yeah, I mean, we invited the governor, your state official, Padilla, I believe is the last name, all the city councilmen, because I believe that the city councilman has to become more involved in these elections, because when all the hoopla is over with, they live in your community and they're faced with some of the same atrocities that's there. So come down to City Hall, call your representative.
That's downtown L.A.
Downtown L.A.
Not Long Beach.
Not Long Beach.
Very
downtown
important.
L.A. I'm going to fight traffic. And I want to say this to you all. It's one thing about telling a story, but then it's great when you tell the story just on an equal playing field. And that's the one thing I think we're fighting for, what is happening in the media, where we're neglecting what's right and what's true. And that's what I believe has resonated for Senator Sanders, because he's brought that hope back that it's no longer there. So for you, Harrison, and you, Mr. Greg, we appreciate you. You keep telling it level. And that way people can take your word and they can trust you, because you're always straight up. And whoever you want to vote for, whatever your preference is, keep that to your inner
circle. And we'll leave my preference out of this, please. Right. Even though I'm looking at you that way.
Right. So, look, I want to say thank you, but I want to say this to you all. If you're voting, cast your vote with pride. Make sure that they allow you to execute it. Stay away from the provisional ballot at all costs. And the last thing I heard you can do is that you can actually go in and vote through audio. If they say they run out of ballots, you can walk into the booth that they have for individuals that may have some type of handicap, and you can demand that you do a audio vote right there versus the provisional ballot.
You mean a verbal vote?
A verbal vote. You say, nope, I want to go in there and I want to verbally vote, and then it will give you everything you need. And just record them. If they give you problems after saying that, pull your phones out and record them.
That's right. Much like the TSA, where we do the manual pat-down rather than the backscatter radiation technology.
So,
I like this.
So let's do that.
Yes.
And let's make this good for California, because if you're a Californian, guess what? You matter. The world will be watching you tomorrow. So show up, make this state beautiful as it is, And thank you, guys. We got the beautiful Shailene Woodley. We have Josh
coming up
Fox.
in just a second. Just a second. We're going to pause, actually. We're going to thank you, Bruce Carter. What's your website? How do we follow you and visit you?
Oh, man. It's you follow the bus. Just get behind us and go. Because we're going back through the South.
Yeah.
And it's called the I'm Sorry I Just Didn't Know Bernie tour, which starts next week. And we need to educate people because, this big lead that she has, guess what? It's because of the South.
Yeah.
So if you remove her just really having these exuberant numbers in the South, then we're really talking about a tight race of delegates and overall voters. Yeah. So our goal is to go back and reintroduce Senator Sanders to everybody in the South, and especially black people in the South, and say, look at his principles, look at his policies, and look at his past. He's the best candidate for you. Let your congressperson know as a superdelegate, they need to respect that when they go to Washington. So this fight is not over. The fat lady has not sung. There's a lot of work to happen. And when we get to July, we're going to fight for every superdelegate to do the right thing, or we're going to go after their jobs. So 2018, we're going after them. And that's like the bottom line. So it doesn't end today. It doesn't end in July. It doesn't end in November. We will get you voted out if you do not represent your people, because you're supposed to be the educated party there.
Ooh.
Now, and that's blackmanforbernie.com.
All right.
And that's BLK Men for Bernie on Twitter or hashtag #BlackMenForBernie. Hey, it's time to go to LA and make this happen.
All right.
Okay.
Greg Palast with me, Harrison with you. We are also live tweeting at GoHarrison, as well as Facebook. You can join us, keyword GoHarrison. Instagram, same GoHarrison. In just a moment, we're going to be talking to Shailene. You heard her name earlier, Shailene Woodley. You know her, of course, from the Divergent movie series, as well as Josh Fox, who's got a big HBO special coming up in July. All of that and more, including Greg Palast, who's here glowing like a 1,000-watt airline landing lamp with all the information you ever wanted. And we will make sure before the end of the program to have that government website so that you will have printed proof and easy 1, 2, 58 directions.
I don't know about easy, but it'll be there, right?
Hang on, more to come.
Lock it in. Come
So you want to bring in
Preventing truth decay.
Truth decay.
Live from Hollywood. This is Harrison.
Hi, I'm Rita Gonzalez.
And I'm Ralph Radabaugh from The Out Agenda. Our guest this week is Dana Van Gorder from Project Inform.
So please join us by logging on to archive.kpfk.org, then click onto The Out Agenda.
Major funding for Harrison is made possible by a generous grant from the Christian Coalition and viewers like you. God will get you for that.
Go Harrison.
A Life in Letters is the publishing event of the year, but letters alone cannot tell the full story of America's greatest president. Introducing Reagan, A Life in Post-it Notes.
Nancy, buy more jelly beans. P.S. Red jelly beans, good. Red commies, bad.
Nowhere else could you find such a clear statement of our 40th president's values and opinions than on little yellow squares of paper stuck to the White House fridge.
Nancy, please wash my overalls. Use Tide. P.S. Not the tide of Marxism that threatens our very way of life.
Reagan, A Life in Post-it Notes, chronicles his thoughts on politics, religion, and even sex.
Dear Nancy, the Berlin Wall has fallen. And when I get home, so will that little lace number I bought you for our anniversary. P.S. Growl.
Reagan, A Life in Post-it Notes is available at Boredom's Books. Buy your copy today and receive the bonus volume, Reagan, A Life in Grocery Lists.
Eggs, milk, and what else? Oh, yes. Eggs, milk, eggs.
Go Harrison. Preventing truth decay.
Truth decay.
Live from Hollywood. This is Harrison.
And it is 24 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. This is Go Harrison, special edition, special primary edition, as we unfold, unwrap, unfurl the flapping, flagellant, flailing phalanges of...
You need more F words.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we'll figure out our quintuple alliteration.
I wonder what F word you could use.
Well, not one we can use here that I know of, except that one. We are talking right now. I just want to re-welcome Greg Palast. It is such a gift to have you back here on American soil after having been banished, serving at the pleasure of the Queen, whatever that means. But you are now back here.
We're going to talk about that.
I know that's another. That was Hamburger Mary's yesterday. Talk about brave.
Amazing.
Yesterday, I am sitting at Hugo's in West Hollywood, gnawing on my omelet with my famous reindeer chihuahua, famous to me. And I look across the street, and I see an old man with white hair and a big old bald spot on the top walking into this, gay restaurant. My people, by the way, hang out in there. I don't because the food is. But anyway, I see this guy walk in there. I'm like, that looks like Bernie Sanders. This guy is radical. He's gangster.
Their Yelp reviews went through the roof.
Unbelievable. Right? So that's why you're here, by the way. I'm teasing the fact that maybe you're here for that purpose, for Bernie Sanders. Greg Palast again from BBC here, Rolling Stone, doing an investigative report. Sitting next to him to his right, because it's radio and you can't really see it, is Josh Fox. Josh Fox is not only a director.
I'm on the left.
A
always
playwright.
On the left.
He's on the left of the cameraman. Of Shailene, environmental activist, best known for your Oscar-nominated 2010 documentary Gasland, as well as you've got an HBO special coming up called How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things the Climate Can't Change, coming up June 27th.
Yeah, that's a feature film.
Yay.
And the third documentary in this trilogy of environmental feature films that starts with Gasland and Gasland Part 2.
And next to you, Shailene Woodley. We know you from Divergent, from Insurgent. And I'm guessing when you act out a movie like this, where you take it all the way to its logical conclusion, and we see nothing but gnawing hell, gnashing teeth, hair, horripilating flesh, you actually live out as an actor what a world would look like if it went that way. And this is what you're fighting now.
Yeah, we did. I mean, those movies were about corruption and tyranny, and they were about genocide. And it's interesting now to be in a political and in a system where I see people, friends of mine, being disenfranchised out of their votes constantly, which makes me question the democracy that we're living. So it is funny, actually, how art parallels life so much.
In fact,
of the time.
I wanted to ask you, why are you marrying Ed Snowden?
I'd do it.
And, is the rumor true? Can we break some news here? Is it true
that I'm moving to Russia?
That Oliver Stone is eyeing you for Mrs. Snowden?
We filmed a movie about Snowden with Oliver Stone, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt played Edward Snowden, and we finished it last year. It comes out this September.
And you are betrothed to?
I play his girlfriend. Yeah, his real life girlfriend.
Oh, okay, very good.
Yeah.
Well, how does that relate to? How do you go from playing Snowden's love interest to Bernie Sanders? Is there any connection, or is that just like just?
I mean,
go through some strange
the reason
membrane.
why I did the Snowden film is I remember when Edward Snowden released all that information, feeling really empowered and really discouraged by the things that I didn't know, being a young woman in this country. And from then on, hadn't really been political. I always was a grassroots activist and felt like my voice didn't matter in the White House because they weren't going to listen to me, so I was going to kind of turn my back on them. And then when Bernie Sanders came to the forefront, I realized that I had an opportunity, and to my belief system, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to elect someone who has been on the right side of history and who has been an activist before he was a politician, still is an activist as a politician, and who isn't running for office for himself, but is running for office for the people. And that's what Edward Snowden did. He released that information not for himself, but for the people. And I think that any time you empower citizens, and it's coming from a place of integrity and of honesty and of truth, there's a lot to be said about that. And so I felt like if I didn't throw myself into this race, I would regret it 40 years from now, 10 years from now.
It is 29 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you. This is Go Harrison. We're taking your live tweets at Go Harrison. We're talking right now with activist Shailene Woodley, who made her film debut as the religious daughter of George Clooney in The Descendants, for which she won an Independent Spirit Award, Golden Globe nomination. More recently, she's gained worldwide stardom with a role in the Divergent series, in which she plays the teenage hero, and also is allegedly married to Edward Snowden.
I can just see the soundbite from this. They don't
vaunted
pay anything
position.
about Bernie Sanders, but the one soundbite that comes from this.
Hey, they're not so dissimilar in many ways, in all the good ways.
In fact, I thought when I said, why are you marrying Ed Snowden, you were going to say because Bernie's taken, but, you know.
Yeah.
Right. And next to Shailene...
Bernie's marrying Ed Snowden, no?
is Josh Fox, who you've spent your whole life in this world of paying attention to food, water, and shelter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, hang on. No confusion. Gasland is not a film about restaurants.
Right. No, it's a film about fracking. And it's a film about the oil and gas industry.
Yeah.
And yes, for the last 8 years, I have been tracking a story that starts with the oil and gas industry expansion into so many of our backyards and to so many places across America, which was Gasland. They came and invaded our backyard in the upper Delaware River Basin, and that's the watershed for New York City. It's part of the pristine wildlife area that allows New York to actually drink clean water. And the oil and gas industry wanted in there, and they wanted in so many other places, including a lot of places here in California, fracking, a new technique to pulverize shale, create fractures in the rock, which contaminates water supplies. It extracts natural gas or oil, but it contaminates water supplies with hazardous chemicals, with volatile organic compounds. It is a carcinogen-dependent process that volatilizes and vaporizes those types of emissions into the air, and of course creates a whole new era of dependency on fossil fuels.
Is that why Bernie Sanders is supporting fracking?
Well, what's amazing right now...
Oh, my God.
I've never had... Wow. I've never been on a radio show with a sound effects panel like that. No, Bernie Sanders is a revolutionary candidate because he's calling for an energy revolution. And what that means is no more fracked gas. Hillary Clinton's plan, by contrast, is 300 new fracked gas power plants across America, hundreds of thousands of fracked gas pipelines, probably 2 million new fracking wells, and basically turning over our electricity generation system to the oil and gas industry for the next 30 to 40 years. They call that the natural gas bridge, right? A 30 to 40-year bridge. Now, the only person who wants to spend 30...
A bridge too far for many of us.
Well, no, the only person who wants to spend 30 years on a bridge is Chris Christie. So that, we know that doesn't wash. And what Bernie Sanders is saying... Let's go straight to renewable energy. Yeah. We're already on the other side of the bridge, and that's true. Renewable energy can provide 100% of our power generation needs right now with current technology. We just need a strong leader. We actually have the political will throughout America. Renewable energy polls extremely high. People want solar. They want wind. They want renewable energy technologies. They're sick of oil and gas contaminating their backyards, running pipelines through their front yards, and causing a health crisis. So Bernie Sanders is answering that call, and I've been across the country campaigning with him. And it dovetails with this new film that we're making because it's about that revolution that is springing up from all across the globe.
Gasland filmmaker Josh Fox. Sitting next to him, Shailene Woodley. We know her from Divergent, from Insurgent. Soon to play the wife of Edward Snowden. Girlfriend, excuse me. Well, we can only hope Eddie does actually get married someday.
Does the right thing by you.
Certainly earned it. And Greg Palast from the BBC, he's been brought here by Rolling Stone magazine to do an explosive investigative report, the topic of which is really what we're looking at today, about voting suppression, about what are the issues that are important, and why are people pointing in certain directions, one more than others. We're watching the CNN or the MSDNC, and we learn that Hillary Clinton is the presumptive... She's the presumptive nominee, but is she also the presumptive indictee? We just haven't really found that out. But there's so many plates spinning here, and hard for anyone to really understand it.
Well, one of the things that people have to understand, and we just had Bruce Carter of Black Men for Bernie, and I had asked him how come Bernie Sanders people are being treated as if they're black voters. That is, you have to understand, black Americans and African Americans and voters of color in America have gone through this obstacle course to vote. You know, you have to show ID. It used to be literacy tests, but now it's all this cockamamie stuff just to get a ballot. I just want to tell people some of the hoops you have to jump through tomorrow, and maybe Shailene can help me out if you're familiar with it. Now, do first-time voters have to show ID here?
In California?
Yes.
First-time voters, I'm not sure if first-time voters have to show ID here. I know I was in Wisconsin. I haven't done a lot of work with students down here.
Okay, so I should tell you that here's the weird thing. There's no state requirement, but some counties are requiring first-time voters to show their ID. Please bring, if you have a passport, do it. If you have your original and only original birth certificate, didn't you catch it when you came out? And if
cesarean.
And the other thing is,
it got wet.
Now, if there's many what are called NPP voters in California. So don't get NPP'd on. If you're an NPP voter, that means you're no party preference. You're a true independent. That's equal to the number of Democratic voters. Here's what you have to do. This is not about voting for Bernie, by the way. This is about voting for anyone. If you want to vote in the presidential primary, you have the right. Bring in. If you got a ballot mailed to you, that's no party preference ballot, has no president on it. You bring it in. You say, and you have to use the magic words. I want to surrender this ballot, not just hand it in because they'll think that you're voting, that you're handing it in to be counted. You want to say, I'm surrendering this ballot. Please give me a crossover Democratic ballot. I want you to repeat those words. Crossover Democratic ballot. I surrender my NPP ballot. I want a crossover Democratic ballot. We are getting reports that in places like Santa Rosa and elsewhere in California, that if you don't use those magic words, and this might sound like a bad joke. This might sound
Jim Crow.
This like Jim Crow.
Yeah,
well,
right?
no. Today it's Dr. James Crow, systems analyst, and if that the Dr. James Crow requires you to say those exact words, I need a crossover ballot. If you don't, you won't get it. And if you say I want a ballot with the presidents on them, they won't give it to you. If you say I want a Democratic ballot, they won't give it to you. You have to say I want a crossover Democratic ballot. Crossover Democratic. This you have to say this in most states, in most counties. L.A. County, they're telling the poll workers to ask you which ballot you want, but L.A. is unusual. Orange has been terrible, and some places you can ask for that ballot, and they're telling you that you have to vote on a provisional ballot. Now, a provisional ballot we've talked about previously on the show is a placebo ballot. Makes you think you voted. You haven't. Say, I don't want a provisional ballot. I want a crossover Democratic ballot. That is your right. Okay, bring your ID. And if you want to bring in your ballot, I hate to say it, the Secretary of State is requiring you, and in some counties requiring you to bring in the envelope as well. If you just bring in the ballot without the envelope, you can't vote.
This is insane.
It's crazy.
We
had poll
were
workers.
Yesterday at the. Here you go. Your voice is nicer.
Let me just
we had
reintroduce
poll
you
workers
so we know who
coming up
we
to
are
it.
here.
This is Josh Fox.
Josh Fox.
We had poll workers. We were both speaking at the Bernie Sanders rally yesterday in San Diego. And poll workers came up to us and said, look, there's all sorts of things that we are being told to do that aren't kosher. And this just to me sounds one of the most
they
insane.
They were told that to be friendly with the provisional ballots.
Right.
Be friends with the provisional ballots are our friends.
Yeah.
Invented by George Bush, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Yes.
This is a Bush administration
this was created
invention.
In 2000, after the disaster, after the vote in Florida was stolen. Black people, in fact, when my investigation for BBC and The Guardian uncovered that black people were removed from the voter rolls as felons, their only crime was voting all black. So the Black Caucus said, let's create a ballot that if your name has been wrongly removed from the voter rolls, you get to vote provisionally, and then we'll check and see if you have a right to a vote. Well, they won the right to a provisional ballot, but not the right to have it counted. So last election, 2.1 million people were given provisional ballots. They were put in the shredder. You got to pretend you voted. You didn't. Don't take a provisional ballot now, guys. Please tell them you are entitled to a crossover Democratic ballot. If you're NPP, obviously if you're a Democrat, you just get that Democratic ballot. This is serious and it changes the election. Overwhelmingly, the independent NPP, no party preference voters in California are Sanders voters, about 4-1, and the regular Democrats are about 3-1 for Hillary. So how they're treating these NPP people is going to change this election. And I'm not saying whether you should vote for Sanders, but I'm saying it should be based on the vote, not the blockade.
I have a question. In New York State,
Josh
in New York State, Josh Fox, Gasland. Here we are, and How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change. Longer title. Greg, in New York, when I remember the night of the New York primary, when we had worked so hard, we saw exit polls coming in 48-52 Hillary, Bernie. Now, 4 percentage points separated the candidates. Then when the results came in, magically, it was 16-point lead for Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
Now, this struck a lot of us as quite odd. Is there possible that so many people voted provisionally? And that how many people, how many provisional ballots were actually out there that they thought they had voted, and that would have brought the result much closer? Is this something that people are looking into?
Well, I did if you go to gregpalast.com, you'll see my investigation, which I did for several outlets. And I was working with the New York Public Interest Group. They have now filed a lawsuit saying that, for example, in Brooklyn, 127,000 people had their names flushed off the voter rolls, and they're given what in New York they call provisional ballots, affidavit ballots. Yep. And so you had a massive, massive number of affidavit ballots. By my calculation, it was close to a dead heat in the end, and because the exit polls are pretty solid. But if you take out those provisional ballots, what they call affidavit ballots in New York, so this game has been going on. And I want to warn the Democratic Party, if you think it's cute, it ain't, because this is a game that's been used by the GOP against voters of color for now 16 years. And so be careful, all of you, about the provisional ballots. Don't accept them. This is a game that they play, giving people of color what we call placebo ballots. And let me turn it back to Harrison. Go, Harrison.
Thank you. That's the voice of Greg Palast, BBC's Greg Palast, and of course brought in specifically by Rolling Stone magazine to uncover this egregious opportunity that somebody somewhere wants to deselect some 7 million of us, it turns out. We're going to look at that number and what that actually means in just a moment. We're also talking to Josh Fox. You know him from Gasland Academy. Hell, you've got an HBO feature coming up in just a couple of weeks. We're going to look at that. And Shailene Woodley, we know you from Divergent, we know you from Insurgent, and we know you as a millennial standing up on behalf of millions of people whom you will never even meet. You are their voice. It's just no stress or pressure
backs,
here.
You know? That's
yes,
democracy.
Yes, you do, and that's what's fascinating. We're going to touch that as well as do a special Google search, which you can do too, and find out what that government website is that's going to give you all the instructions on how actually to pull off something we call voting here in the United States. As we continue, this is a special Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, and 99.5 in Ridgecrest, China Lake.
Locking in. Coming up, more Harrison. GoHarrison.com.
Grand Performances, downtown LA's premier outdoor summer concert series, launches its 30th season on Friday, June 10th at 8 p.m. Grand Performances presents Prejudice and Pride, a special outdoor screening from the celebrated PBS series documenting the transformation of Chicano identity through activism in the 60s and 70s. No tickets or advanced reservations are required. To learn more about this screening and other upcoming concerts, visit grandperformances.org or call 213-687-2190. KPFK is a proud media sponsor of Grand Performances 2016.
Major funding for Harrison is made possible by a generous grant from the Christian Coalition and viewers like you. God will get you for that.
Go Harrison.
Well,
should I use Huggies, Pampers, or a cheap generic brand?
Page 57.
Do I wipe toward the front or the back?
Page 84.
How will I know when my baby's diaper is full?
Page 1. L. Ron Hubbard's Diapernetics, the best-selling parental health book of all time. Read it or wipe with it.
Oh.
Go Harrison.
Right.
All right, you're hearing the giggles and chuckles live in studio. Harrison with you. This is Go Harrison. You can follow us anytime on Twitter. We're taking your live tweets, by the way, and talking to Greg Palast, BBC's Greg Palast, along with Rolling Stone reporter, brought in specifically to uncover election fraud coast to coast here in our 327 million person mid-continent. We have Canada north. They don't seem to be having these problems. Even Mexico to the south doesn't seem to be having as many problems. In fact, the United Nations doesn't seem to want to invade the United States the way we invade other countries. We roll in tanks. We're going to check your voting in Russia. But here it's like, right? We're also talking to Josh.
That's a great live sound
That was
effect
a
right
really
there.
great live sound.
What was that?
That wasn't a tape.
That was like a door. It's
Oh,
like a door slamming and yawning at the same time.
Next to Josh Fox of Gasland is Shailene Woodley. And both of you are here talking on behalf of the other humans who aren't exactly sure what's going on. But you've got this wonderful connection of synapses and dendrites where your brains function in such a way where you can actually talk and explain Lucy what's going on out there. Greg Palast puts it so brilliantly in print and in your documentaries, which we can see at gregpalast.com.
Yes.
Josh, you've got this documentary coming up, or this feature film on HBO. What are we going to see with that?
I'm sorry. You're so funny. I can't get my head together. So my new film is called How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change, on HBO at the end of the month. It's actually playing in L.A. right now at the Music Box Theater in Beverly Hills.
Great film.
It's my investigation into climate change.
Yeah.
And honestly, when you really look at what's happening with climate change, it's extraordinarily depressing when you figure out that, well, I shouldn't say depressing. It's depressing. It's extraordinarily grievous and despairing and angering because you figure out that we should have been focusing on this years ago, decades ago. I was with Ed Begley this afternoon, who had an electric car in 1970. You know, we could have been focusing on the climate change problem, and we're so late in it that so many aspects, the negative aspects that we think about when we think about climate change, are on their way and they're baked in and they're already happening. We have warmed the Earth currently by 1 degree Celsius. Now, not so long ago, we didn't think that would do so much damage, but think about your freezer at home. If you warmed it by 1 degree Celsius, everything in it would start to melt and your food would spoil, and that's what's happening on the planet Earth. We're melting the polar ice caps. They're draining into the oceans. We're going to rise sea levels. We've made the atmosphere 5% wetter, which means hotter and warmer and larger storms,
Tornadoes, hurricanes.
Swarms of tornadoes, superstorms like Superstorm Sandy. Means more intense drought, more intense flooding. It means 30 to 50% of the species. Well, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So we've already warmed the Earth by 1 degree. We have enough carbon dioxide and methane and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere now that will radiate more heat for the next several decades to bring us to 1.5 degrees no matter what we do. 1.5 degrees is baked in. At 2 degrees, we bring about an unstoppable process of 5 to 9 meters of sea level rise. That's meters, not feet. That means we lose New York City, Philadelphia,
Yards,
Washington, D.C.
for people who aren't sure.
Yards.
Lots.
Right.
Hey, surf's up.
That means that, that means though that but
Philly.
Well, major coastal cities, the surfing problem is not what I worry about. What I worry about is the fact that you have all these oil and gas refineries and nuclear power plants that have to start to get moved now, or else all that contamination is going into the ocean.
Relocating a nuclear power plant.
It takes 30 to 40 years, 20 to 30 years to decommission a nuclear power plant. We have to start these things now. So when you look at that means that's the How to Let Go of the World part of the film. It's a really upsetting and angering, grievous process to look at the fact that we're going to lose 30 to 50% of the species on the planet when we hit 2 degrees. We're going to worsen all of these effects, and we're on our way there. We're on our way to 3 or 4 or 5 degrees warming if we do nothing about this. And the film kind of hits a brick wall at 100 miles an hour and then asks the question, the crucial question, well, what are all the things climate can't change? What are the things that are so deep inside of us that no storm can take them away? And then it becomes this incredible trip around the world to find the people who have no choice. And I was picked up by a kind of tornado of the film and taken to the Amazon to work with indigenous environmental monitors who are exploring oil spills deep into the Amazon, or with human rights defenders in China fighting Chinese coal, even at the expense of their own civil rights, or to the Pacific, where a group called the Pacific Climate Warriors, who are not drowning, who are fighting Australian coal by blockading coal ships with hand-carved traditional canoes in the port of Newcastle. Incredible stories of resistance, resilience, human rights, democracy, love, community. These are the things that climate can't change. And I think we often overlook, in an election year especially, what are the other things that are democracy? Democracy is not just voting. Democracy is participation. Democracy is civil disobedience. Democracy is building community. Democracy is building renewable energy. And one of the things that we're doing in coincidence with the rollout of the film is that Shailene and I are launching a project to work with renewable energy in the inner city, especially in poor communities that are facing fossil fuel extraction. We're fighting the extraction. We want to also bring the solution to the communities.
Two things. I want to make sure that we get your name. What's your name, fool? That's my up to Ali. May he rest.
My name is Josh Fox, and the movie is called How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change. It's on HBO June 27th.
Okay, and Shailene is working with you. Explain your project, if you could.
A few days ago.
This is Greg Palast, by the way, taking Cary's place, not letting the host ask the questions anymore.
I'm just getting a pedicure in the corner.
It's an insurgency, you know.
It is an insurgency.
Okay, go ahead. Shailene.
A few days ago, Josh and I went on a toxic tour of Los Angeles.
Nice. That was easy.
Yeah, super easy.
What else? What else did you do?
45 minutes south of here is a town called Wilmington.
Oh, yeah.
And Wilmington is 9 square miles, I believe. And within those 9 square miles, you have the largest oil refinery west of the Mississippi. You also have second largest, or one of the top largest oil refineries west of the Mississippi. We visited people's homes where there were oil drills in their backyards, church parking lots, fracking wells right next to parks where little children are playing. And we had this really interesting interaction with this man. So we show up to this park.
They're actually 42 years old, but they never grew because they're in that park.
These 42-year-old, 3'5" kids. We pulled up to this park, and the man came out and he said, "You can't be in here. This is a private park. We need to ask you to leave." So we left. And we were standing outside of this fence, and there was a chain link fence dividing us from this father. And he said, "You need to leave." And we were like, "The only reason we're here is I'm sure you want to protect your son who's playing in that field right now. Do you know anything about what that building behind you represents and the emissions that building is leaking?" And he couldn't hear us. And what has happened in our communities is the fossil fuel industry has pitted community members against community members. So they actually don't have to do the dirty work because now they've subsidized this park so that this man can offer a private park to kids for $100 a month so their parents can afford it. And his argument was, well, I need my kid to be competitive because if he's competitive, he's Latino. If my kid's competitive, then he'll have a better chance of getting a scholarship, so he'll have a better chance of going to college so that he can actually have a life that's different than the life I've lived. That's the system that we're living in. It's so corrupt and it's so deeply sunk. So Josh and I, we were driving back from San Diego this morning and talking a lot about this initiative and how we want to change the narrative around putting the power back in the people's hands.
Right.
The fossil fuel industry is not going to listen to us. Then you empower communities. You put solar panels on everyone's roofs. You use wind turbines for energy. And all of a sudden, now you have a community that's not even using the oil that's in their backyards. So you have a new argument to stand up against the fossil fuel industry. Instead of saying, we don't want you here, and them going, well, you're kind of dependent on us. Mm-hmm. You can say, we don't want you here. We're not dependent on you. You have to leave.
And it's another economic driver of the community, right?
Yeah.
When you
Exactly.
put toxic fossil fuels in your backyard, then all of a sudden your community becomes implanted with this monster that you can't get rid of because now you're working for it and your job is dependent upon it. And it's actually a job, and you're drinking in it and showering it and you're breathing in it. Most importantly, the breathing, the air pathway for health problems for volatile organic compounds.
A recent example right here in Los Angeles, the dreaded plume, the natural, quote, natural gas leak.
I'm from that area.
Yes, with the methyl mercaptan, which was really the deadly business, heavier than air, so it sinks into the drinking water. The lighter than air, the gas of the plume covered the entire state of California by satellite imagery, bigger than ExxonMobil spill.
It was the largest point source of emissions for greenhouse gases in the world, and it went on for 4 months. Look, these things, we have to get toxic fuels out of the communities. Hundreds of years from now, they're going to ask, why did we ever have explosive materials in the home? Why did we ever have toxic materials in the home? It will look like it looked 100 years ago when you had factories billowing black smokes in the middle of our cities. That's how antiquated that will look. The way we do this is we make sure there's an economic driver that actually supports the community rather than ripping it apart from within, that actually supports sustainability, supports higher property values, all of these things that solar panels do to your home. It gives you clean energy, and it actually is an investment in the community, not ripping it apart. So what now we're doing is we're reaching out to renewable energy companies, which I've worked with for many, many years now, and working on solutions and solutions grassroots or grassroots solutions to go ahead and invest in inner city as a response, and that's something that we're doing with the rollout of the film.
We need to just take care of business for a second because we're down to our last few minutes. Greg Palast, BBC, Rolling Stone in here talking about voter suppression. We've got 1,000 phone calls. I apologize we didn't get to them, but we do have a couple of minutes left. Couple of phone messages. People brought them up from the front desk. And we just want to finish up about the voting because tomorrow is really the big day. And this is the game changer why you guys are here, is that people can express this desire to make the world a better place. It is Hotel Earth. Everyone gets a room, right? Here's one of the messages. A Democrat received a Republican ballot. What can he do? Part 2. Another call is received a Democratic ballot with no presidential candidate names on it. We're just going to reset these situations and just know we're going to post a website. We'll have it at Greg Palast on Twitter, at GOHARRI, my Twitter, and then we'll share it with Josh and with Shailene Woodley so that you can go to a place and figure out how to vote in California on this critical election.
Okay, I'm going to, if you go to gregpalast.com, GREGPALAST, I'm going to render down the crazy treasure map that you have to follow,
yes,
which is at the Secretary of State of California's website. But I'm gonna boil it down to a few quick things. But I do want to tell you right now, if you are an NPP, no party preference voter, you have to go in and say, I want a crossover Democratic ballot. If you got a ballot in the mail, you must bring in that ballot, and with the envelopes, by the way, and photo ID, but it's important. You can bring in the envelopes too, hand them in, say, and you have to use the magic words, I'm surrendering this ballot. So they don't just take it and say, you've cast your blank ballot now. They say, I'm surrendering this ballot in return for a crossover. And you have to use the term crossover Democratic Party ballot. Clearly, this is, by the way, not so easy for the poll workers themselves to figure out. Give them this guidance. Print out the instructions I'm going to have at gregpalast.com within the next hour. By the time you're listening to this, so please get to gregpalast.com. And I'll tell you what, I'll give you something for free for being a good boy and a good girl for going to the gregpalast.com. And on the right side, there's a comic book written by me, Ted Rall, and
the
Bobby,
humorist Bobby Kennedy.
And Bobby Kennedy. It's a lot of laughs. It's a comic book called Steal Back Your Vote.
Oh, my God.
It looks awesome, by the way.
Steal Back Your Vote. And you'll love it. It was the number one selling adult single-issue comic book of all times. So please, you get that for free if you also get the information on how to vote, because I want you to vote. I don't care who, but please vote tomorrow.
But we care who.
Yeah, we care who.
No,
Shailene and Josh care who.
Who do you care that people vote about?
Bernie Sanders. One thing I want to say, too, is if you do go and you are handed a provisional ballot, regardless of what you say, regardless of what your argument is, make sure you document it. As soon as you leave the polling location, make sure you report it. Make sure you write it down. Make sure you detail every single part of your experience, because all of those testimonies are going to count as we investigate
and
after the
by
primary.
law, too, you can do a verbal vote. If they play too much with the paperwork, you are allowed to do, we're told, a verbal vote,
Yes.
and they have to write it down.
Yes, well, what it is you go into the booth. They actually record your votes. It's for people who have trouble writing. You can do an oral, that is, a speaking
Yes.
vote. Now this will be important. Now listen to this, guys. There are not enough ballots in California. There are not enough, especially the crossover Democratic ballots. If they say we're out of ballots, do not take a provisional ballot. It can't be counted because you're not entitled to it. But you are entitled to say, I want to speak my ballot. This is Greg Palast.
And Josh Fox, quick website.
HowToLetGoMovie.com is my website.
Shailene Woodley.
But today,
we've
go to
gotta
BernieSanders.com.
Yes, absolutely. Harrison with you. You can follow us anytime at Go Harrison, KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara.
Well, one of the things that I've found is that based on what it appears that corporate America wants, the establishment wants, and they want it by any and all means possible. So whether it's cheating a Latino at this point, a black, or all of y'all the same. So if you're for Bernie Sanders, you're all like bad right now. So we feel like this bad behavior will happen more where people are more likely not to voice the opinion loud that night. And when I say that, there's a lot of new voters. That means you have young people that haven't voted before, and they're doing it because someone approached them. They love the fact that they could support Senator Sanders. That's probably the only reason they're voting. You have some black men who I've personally been in Watts and Compton who were not going to vote, and after talking to them, they said, well, man, I'll go ahead and do it. But we need it to happen the right way. And it's those people that, I'll say Governor Brown and his underlings know that, if we can disrupt that vote, then we have a chance to really do what the mainstream media want to do, and that's pronounce former Secretary of State Clinton as the victor. And for those things, it is illegal. It's wrong. And I think that's what's fueling people to not want to support her, as I'm definitely a Bernie or bust guy.
I just want to ask one thing. At 4 p.m. today in Los Angeles, you're going to be down at City Hall holding a press conference because you don't like the way that voters, especially voters of color, are being treated right now. Could you explain what your issue is?
Our biggest issue is, as we've talked with poll workers, there's just not enough ballots. You just explained the importance of the NPP ballot. And when you look at the numbers...
Wait just one second. NPP means that you're no party preference, a real independent voter. That's millions of voters in California. You can vote in the Democratic primary, but you have to say the magic words. It's not Mother May I, it's not abracadabra. It's I want a crossover Democratic ballot.
I'm just going to jump in for a second so we can identify. All seen the Divergent series. We've seen Insurgent. We understand what it's like in this draconian, Huxleyan, Orwellian future, what it looks like when things go wrong. And that's why these movies are doing what the news won't do here in the U.S. They play it all the way out to the end game. And when actors actually spend years shooting these things and learning how to tell these stories, they become real experts, much as if you had read Orwell's 1984 a dozen times or Animal Farm 63.7 times as I did. It was the 0.7 times I had to finally put it down. You sort of get a sense of what this stuff really is going to look like and how it's going to unfold. And then you have people like Josh Fox. We all know him from Gasland, right? Gasland 1, Gasland 2. Now we have Gasland 3, Academy, Oscar-nominated, a huge documentary. He has become the go-to ubiquitous anti-fracking fracker, right? This guy knows how to defrack what is fracked up here in the U.S. So he's going to be coming on and telling you how he connects and reaches so many. Again, this is the key thing. How do you and I connect with 327 million other Americans? Well, you're going to find out how. Plus, how your vote is truly going to count tomorrow. Did I mention Bruce Carter? I believe I did earlier. Bruce Carter, and there's a massive bus, by the way, outside our KPFK studios right now. This thing is so huge, you could put 48 different families in there, plus the entire contents of the largest Hilton. And this thing is massive. Black Men for Bernie is the bus. And what Bruce does is restores families across America, the awareness for Bernie Sanders all over the place. He's going to be our first guest here. And before we bring him on, I want to reintroduce you to a name that is so... Well, if it's not in your back pocket, written down on a piece of paper, where to go, who to talk to, and who has the secret keys to the automobile of insanity, it is Greg Palast. And Greg, as always, welcome to Go Harrison.
Glad to be with you, Cary. And today is a savior.
Identify the voices. People jump in and out of cars, in and out of their buses, such as you, Bruce Carter. We are talking right now with Greg Palast, famous BBC reporter, also brought here personally by Rolling Stone magazine to do an explosive investigative report on how this election is so fraudulently being delivered, or shall we say, undelivered to those who care. NPP, we've heard this term, no party preference, called independent, which I'm independent and Greg is independent. Mm-hmm. If you are mistakenly part of the American Independent Party, you are not independent. You are codependent with Lyndon LaRouche and the late George Wallace. So that's another problem altogether. But you must, and here's what Greg and what Bruce are telling you. If you are wanting to vote for a Democrat, for Bernie Sanders, you must physically, verbally stand in front of Mildred with the glasses at the end of her nose, sitting behind that little table, and say, I want a Democratic crossover ballot.
Yes.
I want that. And we are now hearing also that a lot of these people are being told not to give them out. Sorry, we don't have any. So you can demand that as your right. Is that right?
Right, and do not. And Bruce can tell you this. Bruce is from Black Men for Bernie. And by the way, just so you know, I'm not for Bernie or Hillary or anyone.
Right.
I'm or for Ernie. I'm here because
you're for Ernie.
I'm a the Cookie Monster. But yes, my purpose is to make sure people are informed so they can vote. Okay, this is about not who you vote for, but that you can vote. People are being told if they're NPP, in some areas, we just got another affidavit coming in from a poll worker saying they were told once again to give out to the voter a provisional ballot. A provisional ballot, if you heard our last broadcast, is a placebo ballot, guys. It makes you feel like you voted, but you haven't voted. Have you run into problems like that, Bruce?
Well, I've seen and heard the problems across the country, New York probably being the most famous. But I spent some time at the election register office on Saturday and spoke with the head clerk.
And it is 2 o'clock. Cary Harrison with you. This is a special edition of Go Harrison. Coming up, Shailene Woodley. You know her from the wonderful Divergent and Insurgent series. Yes, she is feeling the burn. So is Josh Fox. You know him, of course, Oscar-nominated 2010 documentary Gasland. He is also feeling the burn. And Bruce Carter, Black Men for Bernie, restoring families across America. He's touring the U.S., raising awareness for Bernie Sanders, targeting families. Plus, of course, Greg Palast, BBC reporter brought in by the Rolling Stone, here to investigate election fraud. We're going to give you the top secret tips of how you can successfully vote tomorrow. Hear it only here on KPFK.
What's new about Tiger Woods?
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson.
Elvis Presley.
O.J. Simpson. Abandoned base.
Go Harrison. Talk show, random, political, outrageous, philosophical, analytical, passionate, into sunsets, roadkill cooking tips, open-minded, swordsman, bent, resolute, investigative, companion, fearless, piercing the cloud of mainstream entertainment. Live from Hollywood, Go Harrison.
And it is 1 minute past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. We are going to do a special 1 hour today, an all-star loaded cast. Some of the greatest thinkers, some of the greatest activists from anywhere in the world coming in to tell it like it is. Now understand, when people are celebrities, when people are investigative journalists like the great Greg Palast, whose voice you're going to hear in just a moment, have been in exile. Why? Because when you put a little pressure against the owners, sometimes they become disrelished, and you end up being, sent overseas where you get to do good work. And we find out what's going on Capitol Hill by going to London, then only to come back to the U.S. Then we have Shailene Woodley. Now,
Your vote emergency alert. Whoop, whoop. Because I've just gotten some really unpleasant news. Let's see if we can make a joke out of the collapse of our democracy. I got a notice from Santa Rosa, a legal affidavit that was signed in which someone says that the county officials are telling all the poll workers that if you go in to vote and you're what's called an NPP voter, that does not mean National Police Playback. It does mean no party preference. In other words, if you're a real independent voter, you have the right to vote in the Democratic presidential primary, but you must ask for a crossover ballot. Now, if you're in Santa Rosa or some other benighted counties in California, they are telling you that if you don't use the words, I want a Democratic Party crossover ballot, you get an NPP ballot, which has no presidential race on it. So you can't vote for Bernie, you can't vote for Hillary, you can't vote for nobody for president. And that is illegal, okay? That's just ugly vote suppression. Because a third of Americans, in fact, the NPP vote in California is as big as the Democratic Party vote. Bernie is winning among NPP voters by the polls by 40 percentage points, whereas regular Democrats are going for Hillary by 30. So if they stop the NPP vote, they've taken this race from Sanders not by the vote, but by blocking the vote. And we have with us Bruce Carter of Black Men for Bernie. And I have a very quick question for you, Bruce.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We've heard these stories now, and I want you to fill it out, about suppression of the vote that would affect Bernie Sanders. Why is it that Bernie Sanders voters are being treated like they're black?
Well, the biggest thing is...
We should point out, by the way, that it is possible, and I can neither confirm nor deny, that Bruce Carter may or may not be black, too.
It's a possibility.
So you have a certain expertise.
That's a possibility.
Yes.